Hello, I'm Colin.
Evening, I'm John.
And we're joined by former Hibs owner David Duff. David, how are you doing?
I'm very well. Hello, everybody, whoever's there.
Thanks for joining us, David. So just to set the scene for the listeners, what we're going to be talking about tonight is start off with your new book, Sunset on Hibs, the plot to destroy Hibernian, which talks about the Mercer takeover, plus the kind of the lead up to of how you took over the club in the first place. So we'll talk about that for half an hour. In the second half of the show, we'll talk about yesterday's game where Hibs kind of surrendered quite meekly at Ibrox, which is a really
You know what? They had their chances, though. So it's a disappointing that you don't get many chances. You got to take your chances against the old firm. So
that's
anyway,
it. And you need the big
Very
decisions
true.
going your way as well, which
yeah,
didn't
that's
happen
true.
yesterday.
Penalty for Rangers, as we used to say.
That's it. So David, how did the book come about? It's been a long time in the making. I was having a read earlier on, a long time in the making, hasn't it?
So my time at Hibs was a dream, and I was very young, and but it didn't end really very well for me. So it's something that was kind of put away and shelved away. It hurt my family, it hurt every aspect of my life, and I never really thought that I would come and revisit it. But I just got to the point, kind of coming up through lockdown. When we came into lockdown, I thought, what can I do that's useful? And I thought, I'm going to tell my Hib story, the story that I saw and that came before me, because I think it should be part of of the whole story, so that it's part of Hib's history. This thing happened, partly my fault that it happened, but it happened, and we moved forward, and amazingly, football clubs that we all love, they survive because they have to. So I just thought, I mean, really, I started to tell it. I had a few drinks with Andy Gorham just before he got very ill, and we were talking about old times and the likes, and then I just thought we had such great stories as well. I wanted to tell the stories because I was very much a peer group of the players, very much about their age. And I think nowadays, I mean, as clubs and directors never meet the players, but in those days we were kind of one. We were the Hibernian Football Club. We were one team, and everybody kind of worked together and pulled together, and we could argue amongst ourselves, but we all had each other's backs. And I just wanted to bring the stories, the funny stories and the good stories, and the kind of love that was in that time, and how we kind of really knocked on the door and didn't quite make it to where I hoped we would get to.
Because you mentioned it, like you were young, like sort of around the players' age, early 30s when you took over the clubs. How did that come about?
So I mean, I've been in law. I'd been a solicitor down south, and I'd had various clients, but I always kept my connection with the Hibs. And when I came up to see relatives, we always used to go to Easter Road, and it really did come around, as I say in the book, that we were just there one Saturday, and it was kind of dire. What was going on in the park was dire. There was hardly any people there. Everything was falling to bits, and I just said, "Do you know what? Let's try and buy this and see if we can go on an adventure and make this great again." Because I'm from a generation where Hibs really were great. I'm from the generation of Paddy Stanton and Peter Cormack and Marinello, and players that were just fantastic. Ed Shadler and players such as this, and they were a great Hibs team. And I just felt we'd kind of lost an awful lot from those days. And if you go back even further, not my time, of course, you've got the famous five, and you've got, and what a history we've got. First team, first Scottish team in Europe, first British team in Europe, first people to have undersoil heating. And it's almost like Hibs saw everything that was coming before it came and got there first. So as a football club, we're this funny little football club from Leith, founded in the potato farm because people wouldn't play football with the Irish boys. An incredible history, and just looked out onto that, and it just looked so dire and terrible. I thought, surely we should be doing better than this. I still think it today, and I think we're possibly knocking on the door today of being that better. But it's taken a long time to get back to that.
So, David, you wanted to
mentioned-
buy the club. Sorry, John. You wanted to buy the club, but obviously needed more money, so you got the boy Roland involved, didn't you? That's kind of where it all went?
Yeah,
That's where it all went wrong.
Roland, in retrospect, was a mistake. But if we had the benefit of retrospect, we'd never make mistakes. And he was chosen for a particular thing. I was talking to Irvin Scholar at Tottenham, and he took the first British club public. He had some great ideas, and I thought, I mean, the great thing, what we tried to do, or what I wanted to do, was find someone that could give us assets that didn't take too much time and work up, but could give us an income where we could match the big clubs without having to put 50,000 bums on seats, which we can't do on a week-to-week basis. And so that was the plan. And Roland had promised to give us all these fabulous properties that just paid rent. And of course, when you get rent reviews, up goes the value, and up goes the rent, and up goes the money. And going the public route meant that, you know, we'd have a lot of shareholders, but they were going to get part of the profit. So we didn't have to, they weren't loans that we would then have to pay back. And that was the plan. And had everything gone right, that probably would have worked. And, you know, we might have looked back at Roland in a different way. I don't know. But it's hard for me to have any kind of affection to David now, because he completely double-crossed us and you know, it was a big influence on what happened in my life and also what happened to Hibs. So everything's forgivable, but David's hard to forgive at times, you know. So.
He's a big Tory now as well, isn't he? So
he's a big Tory. Yeah, well, you know, excuse me for the smile and laugh I had when all the Hibs fans once again got together and made sure he didn't become the Tory treasurer, because again, it showed the strength even years later that up with him we were not going to put, you know. And yeah, I haven't talked to him for years. I talked to Sheila a couple of times. Everybody that went through this is so bruised that nobody really wants to talk about it, and everybody thinks I'm completely crazy to write the book. But I just think that part has to be part of our history, and has to be. Look, if people don't want to believe it or accept it, I've not got a problem with that. I really don't. But it's there, you know, it's there to be examined and looked at. And the hardest thing on the book was verification. My friend Ewan Flynn, he made me justify every sentence that I said. And there were times I could have strangled him. It was so difficult because, you know, he put everything to the test. And now I'm so grateful for him, because I can look at the book now and I think, you know, it's so much better than when we first started, because we've been able to really kind of analyze it and get it into. So I told a story and he helped me turn it into a book, basically. So that was really good. But that was the hardest bit, was the kind of verification, and also knowing that, you know, maybe it would open up some memories to people, my own people, that they would rather kept under the table. So there was a bit of, should I really be doing this or not? But at the end of the day, this is the Hibernian Football Club, and I thought the story should be told.
Sorry, on you go, John.
Oh, sorry. No, it was a good segue into the question I was hoping to ask, which was, you mentioned that you had a bit of spare time, you wanted to do something during COVID, which in some ways seems like a lifetime ago, but it's only really 5-6 years ago. Yeah. When you decided to write the book, and with the 150th anniversary of the club, how much of that was an influence, if any?
So it was more. So it was more the influence of kind of meeting some of the players again from the past. And I'll tell you how I wrote the book. The first chapter I wrote was the story about Andy Gorham, and we were at Ibrox, and the little boy ran out in front of the bus, and he came running down the bus and looked after the little boy, and we all looked out at the window, and there was our goalkeeper, clad in green, and and in his arms was a red, white, and blue Rangers fan, and it kind of had a very profound effect on everybody, and kind of showed up how silly things like sectarianism is. And you know, in my view, here was here was a human being, and then I started to think of some of the stories that we had, and some of the compassion. People are always saying players are this and players are that. You know, my experience in those days is that most of the players were kind, would give their time and would give, and would give their effort to ensure that the fans got their money worth, as it were. None more than Andy, who lived off adoration. I know he did go to the Blue Noses in the end, and I know now it's like that, including me. But he still is a Hibs hero for me. We took him from virtual obscurity. Joe Royal brought him up himself on the train, and and we kind of built our team around him because he was such a great goalkeeper.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the story of him saving or standing with a kid reminds me. I don't know whether I should go into the joke. There's a joke about the Scotland international keeper, and it could be any keeper really. But they could say, go on for argument's sake, and there's a skyscraper on fire, and there's a woman leaning out the window saying, help my baby, somebody save my baby, and she's got her baby in her arms, and Gorham's at the bottom, and he says, just drop the baby, I'll save it. And she says, look, I can't, like it's too high up. He says, drop it, you're a Scotland international keeper, play for Hibs, play for Rangers, just drop it, I'll catch it. And so she finally sort of agrees, and she drops the baby, and as the baby's falling, there's a gust of wind that takes it, and Gorham has to leap to his left, and he just at the last minute catches the baby just before it lands, and he pulls it into his chest, and every other onlookers are going crazy, they're all clapping, and he stands up and he gives them a wave, and he bounces it and boots it up the park. Anyway, just reminded me of that. Sorry, it was the one.
I did hear a good one when he was with his Rangers colleague and couldn't Super Rally and that, and they were sitting around it after the Hibs League Cup winners, and he if you remember, he'd messed up a couple of things. He messed up the goal that took us through to the final, and he'd said to Alan McCoy, he said, "You know what?" He said, "If I was still at Hibs," he said, "I'd have a winner's medal today." And apparently Alan McCoy said, "If you were still at Hibs, we'd all have a winner's medal today." And and that's the humour of football. It's just great, isn't it? I remember the first Rangers game we had, and we won 1-0, and John Collins scored the goal. And I was told to go knock on the door, whatever happened afterwards, and say good luck or well done or good game if it was a draw anyway. We won, and I was there to say hard lines. And as I knocked on the door, Sooners pushed past me, and Chris Woods was the England goalkeeper, was standing with a big tray of tea and pies, and he just kicked this tray right up into the air, and pies went everywhere. Ooh. So I kind of withdrew and went to the home dressing room and said to Alec Miller, I said, I'm a bit fazed by that. Should I report this? It's terrible. This, and he just said to me, he said, "Chairman, let's hope he's fucking kicking pies every time he comes here." And so that was my introduction to the humour of it, and I hope it's still there. I don't know. I've not been involved with football for a long time, but I hope that hasn't lost that humour, and that camaraderie that we had. Probably has, but there you go.
How did you find the process of writing the book? So you talked about like opening old wounds, and obviously it's a time that not many Hibs fans remember fondly.
No,
always well it ends well kind of thing. Yeah. But how was that process of sort of reliving it again?
So it wasn't easy, but in some ways it was quite healing because it made me think about things that I hadn't thought of for a long, long time, and and self-examine as a big grown-up, because I was a bit of a boy then, and it made me kind of examine myself. As I say, I didn't really want. I just didn't want. People say, "Oh, are you going to say this about Wallace? Are you going to say this about Tom?" I didn't want it to be that book. I just wanted to say, look, I'm going to set down what could have been, what people did, So people did things that you might find horrific, but they weren't really, because they weren't football people. They were businessmen, or they didn't really kind of understand what was what, or they'd didn't assess the situation right. And then you look back and think, well, that's horrendous. How could that happen? But it was a very fast-moving situation. I mean, really and truly, when Roland and Wallace hijacked me, we were down. We were 5-0 down at Ibrox at half-time. That's how bad it was. It looked like there would be no way back, and that was tough, really tough. And visiting that kind of feeling, because when you get these kind of things and the shock, you never actually lose that feeling. You stick it away and you put it into part of your brain that you don't want to think again, but it still hurts you. So it was really good to sort of get that out and go, well, hold on a minute, this did happen, and let's move it on to the next thing. My first goal, and I think Simon Peer says this. So when Simon Peer did the forward, he said to me that he couldn't have any interference. He would do what he wanted, and that was the basis on which he would do it, and that was the basis I wanted him to do it. Mm-hmm. So I didn't know what we were getting from Simon. I really didn't know what was going to come, because I couldn't know what was going to come, and I looked at it, and it sort of brought a tear to my eye that he kind of understood a lot, the good and the bad of what went on. And he's, I was pleased with that. But when I looked at that, and I realised that there was so much of that time, there was stuff going on. Football was changing, business was taking over what had been community sports, basically. I mean, we were, I think we're all still a community club, but all clubs are less community and more business now.
David, sorry to interrupt there. Can I ask, do you think, so obviously Roland was the guy that put the bulk of the money in, right? And then he started offloading these companies into the business as part of that property float thing and all that. Which were failing businesses, which cost us all the money, didn't they? Mm. Do you think, and it wasn't a long period of time that we're talking? The book covers is it's not loads of years. It's only a couple of years.
No, 3 years, I think, start to finish, inside out. So,
and there's like an undercurrent in the book here, like a land grab almost, because all the land underneath Easter Road, all the flats and that are on. Do you think, was there some kind of plan? And I know you're going to say, I don't know, I wasn't aware, but was there some kind of plan from him that land there is worth a fortune, and he was maybe in it with Mercer all along? This is the end game.
I don't believe that at all. Look, they all all the players in this, including myself, had big egos, but they all worked in different ways. I think, looking back, that what Roland was a main chance person. So what happened was that he was genuinely prepared to invest in me and my Hibs dream, until something came along that gave him a big problem, and he thought, I can dump that on Mr. Duff, and he did. So I don't think I think he works on the basis of what's before him quickly, and in a quick time, his problem became my problem, became Hibs's problem. And the sad thing was, I don't think for 1 minute that he thought about that. I think what happened is that Wallace was trying to get something down at Hermiston, some sort of land deal, probably with with David Murray in the background, and the awful, I shouldn't say awful, Mr. Gavin Masterton from the bank, who is a big villain of this piece in my. I mean, I think the Bank of Scotland come out of this badly, even now when I look back. They backed both horses, and it's appalling, really. But when I look back, I think Roland, if Roland had wanted to do that land, he'd have done it. Nobody would have stopped Roland. Nobody, just nobody would have done. He was doing kind of deals everywhere all the time. He just saw when Avon Inns came up, and there I am sort of 30 miles away. He just thought, oh, now here's, I've got a £6 million. I don't know if you know how Avon Inns happened, but it's in the book, so I'll tell you quickly what happened. Is somebody didn't pay a brewery bill, and they had a bankruptcy petition. But when you get that, you have to pay all your debts. You can't just pay the brewery at that point. So you had all these debts over all these hotels and pubs, and he stood to lose a lot of money. And he thought, I know how, if David Duff takes these, and this is the property, he's got property. That's what he wanted. It will underpin Hibs, but it's a lot different running a property company that's bringing in rents than running, an on-hands business. And I wasn't a publican, so I had to learn how to do it. And there's no doubt that I don't even know that he thought he was selling us a duck, but that's what it turned out to be. But I think it's absolutely no way was he in with Wallace at the beginning. I think Wallace was doing his own thing. Then I started doing Straighten with Grant Butchard, and there was two massive property plays, and only one of them could survive. And so I think Wallace and his people thought, well, if we take Hibs out, that clears the road for us to do that one deal. And I think that's basically what happened. But you're right on one thing. I can't ever know for sure, but I'm pretty sure, I'm 100% sure that until Wallace went to Roland to buy his shares, they'd never met.
Just two untrustworthy characters, and when I've read the book, I read it last week, and I was reading it, and I thought, I did. I read it in about a day and a half. Like I kept texting him during it.
Shakespeare.
It was no. I was reading it. I was thinking, I kept seeing like the mentions of the how much the property was worth. And we've seen it, you know, the butterfly area and all that.
Yeah.
And then the Roland like chucking that, as you call it, a dead duck in the business, which brought the value down. And then I thought, it was a bit convenient, didn't tell you, come in this room, here's somebody who's going to buy the club, you know what I mean? You're like, fucking Mercer. You know, it's like, it just seemed,
you know what, I'm going to tell you, the catalyst was probably me buying Ali McGraw from Morton. That was probably the catalyst, because Roland had said to me, don't buy any more fucking players. You know, you're out of this now. Come on. Because that's what I was interested in, is getting a great team. You know, I mean, we had Houchy, we had Archibald, we had Collins, we had God. You know, we were building something really special. Don't buy any more players. And here was a young player that Rangers were after, Liverpool were after him. He's very unlucky. He could have been a great player, but injury, you know, sometimes that happens, and injury took him away. And I went against Roland and went and bought the player, and he went fucking mental. Really, I felt like a 4-year-old, not a 34-year-old. You know, I mean, you know, and that kind of. I think he then thought he couldn't really control me, so it was time to dump me, probably. But I don't, you know, I was there to build a football club. I was there to build a football team. I don't, you know, I'm not going to apologise for trying to make it, you know, a good football team. But I think that was the catalyst, you know. And he thought, I can't, you know, other than sacking me, which he probably could have done with the institutional investors. That was his only way, kind of, out of it. And then he's got a Scottish football club that he doesn't know how to run. You know, and an ex-wife on the board, and an accountant. Where's he going with it? You know, it was my dream, and he, you know, I wouldn't have cared less how much money he made if he just let the dream come to fruition. I mean, somewhere down the line, if we'd had that bit more luck and a bit more time, Straighton would have sorted out Hibs forever, in my opinion. But it's just my opinion.
Mm-hmm. That wouldn't have went down well either, would it?
No,
like that's one, because they tried that again, didn't they, later on? And there was a campaign against
I think the Straighton thing's interesting, because I don't think the issue is, do we want to be in Leith or do we want to be in Straighton? I think what the issue was, here was a big lump of land that opened up with a planning gain, and Hibs were the planning gain. And once it was opened up, they didn't have to move. So, you know, I know Dougie came and Dougie Coleman, I'm talking about, came and presented them, because he was on my board. Probably you don't know that, but, and he came and presented, you know, the watered down Straighton, if I was, but it wasn't really necessary at that point, because the Hibs had already opened up the planning, as far as I'm concerned. You know, the whole point of a stadium move to there, whether it happened or not, you know, brought Costco. I think Costco were the first. Costco came in, and, you know, and then McDonald's, you know, all of the things that are up there came afterwards. But it needed that key to open it, and I believe Hibs were the key to opening that. So the point is, did we want to play there or not, is not really the issue. The issue, because we decided to stay where we were, and we did have kind of, you know, another 5 or 6 acres, which I'd said on a focal point right at the beginning was a key, you know, because it linked in with what was to become the Loch End Butterfly, and so that was another big development thing. So of course it's about property when you look at it. I mean, Hibs sat on 11 acres of middle of Edinburgh, and there we were negotiating on acres and acres up there. And there's all sorts of people that have, you know, probably died even before you were born. People like Jimmy Cook, the convener of Lothian, who really wanted the football clubs to be out of Edinburgh with trams going up to them. You know, that was his dream. And what you've got to remember, and it's not so much now because of planned segregation and the way we do things, but football was pretty unsocial on Princess Street some Saturdays way back then. You know, when if you want to call it the hooligan element or whatever. Well, I mean, it's much more civilized now. Everybody sits down and it's all really lovely. But in the days when you pack people in, it could get a bit tidy, you know. And so there was a time when looking out of towns for get rid of the Victorian stadiums and moving out of town, there was some mileage in that. But you know, in retrospect, I'm really glad Hibs stayed where they were. I was at a family funeral last week, and they used the facilities for the reception, and I was at Peter Cormack's funeral too. So the only two times I've been back at Hibs for funerals. But it's tidy, it's nice, a lovely little stadium, and it's right that they're there. I don't have a problem with that. But I think we miss the issue if you don't, unless you stand back and if we hadn't gone through that progress, the progress off that. We probably wouldn't have stayed there. That's the irony of it, because it opened up other things, which meant that the entrepreneurs, the businessmen, could go and do their thing elsewhere, and the football club was the key to the cabinet, as it were.
Yeah, so you got surprised then, like, but back to Mercer. I suppose I'm looking at the time. I suppose we better get to the bit. The whole point.
I've got some YouTube comments to come as well, Colin.
Oh, have you? Right.
You asked this, and then I'll play
no, it was more like, tell us about, like, so Mercer's going to buy the club and all that, and you said, I'm not selling my shares effectively, and then we had that whole period.
And on the night, I mean, it was like being, it was the biggest shock ever. I was there with. So I was there on my own, but Jim Gray and Alan Monroe were downstairs. They were in the Hilton Hotel across the road, and Roland had a flat at the top of his building, and I'd gone up on the lift, and and there was only him and Jeremy James in the room, and Wallace wasn't there, and then suddenly the door opened, and he came in, and it was a real kind of take to what the fuck's going on? How you see some things and they just don't make sense, and so your brain doesn't really take it in. But so the plan was, I mean, it was game, set, and match. They're saying, right, tomorrow morning we all meet, and you go into this, into the press conference, and that's it. And you take all this money, and everything's going to be great, and we're going to smooth it all over for you. And I'm going, oh yeah, that's fine. We'll see. It was a we'll see. It wasn't, So I went back to the boys and said, right, let's get up there quickly. Let's get a war room going. So there was never a moment in time when we were going to capitulate to this. Absolutely no way, not from thing. But I did kid on. I said, oh yeah, we'll be there in the morning. That was the first goal. That was maybe a Wallace end goal. And you see from the forward in the book that Simon Peters, that was the first thing he said. Where's David Duff? Because Wallace expected me to be there on that stage, handing over the keys to Easter Road. Don't think so.
So was David Rowland right then? Do you think that he couldn't control you?
Yeah, probably. I mean, he couldn't control me. I mean, he told me off sometimes like swear. I think during the bid we met a couple of times. I kind of hurt him by going after the non-franchise shares. There was some non-franchise shares that we went to court and they couldn't vote. And I think some of those were owned by his family. I really didn't know who
owned them. That sounded dodgy as well, though, didn't it?
Yeah, it was all dodgy. But I didn't know who owned them. I just had, I just saw that there's these shares that nobody's owning up to. So, and basically what we did is we went to the court, and the shares were still valid, but they weren't allowed to vote unless they said who they were. They weren't allowed to vote. And he was really upset about that. And so we went and had... So we went and had a meal together, and I tried to sort of say, look, back this out, we can still get out of this. And he said, just take the money and run. And so we had that kind of conversation. And he was very gentle with me on that day, because he really expected me just to come into line. So, to answer the question, could he control me? Obviously, bloody not, because if he did, I would have done what he told me to do. But... you can sell a lot of things, but you don't sell your soul.
David, let me just catch up on some YouTube comments. And what we've got is obviously, like, when we spoke on the phone earlier on, sort of like some of this sort of predates our.
Sure, and
how much we know about it. So, but we do have some viewers and listeners who were around. So Stevie said if David had sold his shares, it could have been totally different. You should have planted one on Mercer the second you realised he was trying to buy Hibs. Sandy said there are only a few of us around still who remember the pain we as supporters went through when Duff was on the board. He nearly killed our club. Please ask him if he'll take responsibility for that.
Yeah, well, the answer is yes. I take responsibility for the fact that I made mistakes. I'm not taking responsibility for the fact that somebody decided because of those mistakes that they were going to destroy our club. But I certainly take responsibility. The young, if I'm writing to the young self, I would write a letter to say, you've got this wrong. But my motivation was to make Hibs a great club. It wasn't anything else.
Green Tea said, saying he was a young boy, he was a man who knew what he was doing. Lots of talk about the truth coming out, but whose truth? I remember that time it was the worst time in my Hibs life. Sandy saying power and money in the wrong hands is always dangerous. Thank God for the Gordon family. I just can't listen to any more of this. Donna,
listen, that's fine. I'm not here to try and convince anybody anything. I've told my story. If people want to read it, they can make their own minds up what they think of it. And I'm very well aware that it's part of a big story. Everybody has a view to it, and I understand what people went through at that time. Trust me, I'm not whinging and moaning about it. Trust me, I went through an awful lot at that time too, and it changed my life. And you know what? I'm not going to complain about it because he's absolutely right. I have to own that. I have to own the fact that I was young, ambitious, and I moved too fast, too soon, with the wrong people. And of course, I take responsibility for that. Of course, I do. But there was no fucking way that Wallace Mercer or anybody else was getting my shares. Excuse the French.
That's all right. We're used to it on this one. Donna said, I closed my bank account with Bank of Scotland. So did a lot of Hibbies, so much so that they had a standard 3-page letter they sent out. Mark said, I remember paying at the 100 Club, still got my letter stuck to my bedroom wall. Douglas Crome and Kenny McLean, cracking couple of guys. David, I suppose, I suppose the last question to wrap up before we go and talk about the football yesterday was, I suppose, what with the book coming out, what was your sort of, what were you hoping to achieve with it?
Okay, just for answer that, can I just say to Donna, if you get the chance to read the book, the story about the Bank of Scotland and closing the accounts is in there, and what I asked Kenny McLean to do. This is the time when there wasn't internet or anything like that. That man managed to get all the Hibs fans out there closing their accounts in a matter of hours. I don't know how he did it. He was a mammoth, and before I go any further, we worked together. We worked together on it. He probably had some views that, like people at the time did, that I have to take some responsibility. But I think he recognised that working with me would save Hibs, and that's what we did. No, sorry, getting back to your question, what am I trying to achieve? Just simply, I just want to, in my lifetime, I want to just have told my story. Let's move on. I don't have anything against the Gordon family. I don't have anything against the farmers. I don't have anything against anybody, but it's part of Hibs history, and I think it has a place there. And, there's lots of things. I've got John Collins's first ever Scotland International shirt. I intend to gift that back at the launch of the book to the Hibs Trust. It was given to me on my birthday, 17th of February, the day that he played it. It's time to come home, and maybe that's what I'm saying to the book. It's time to come home. And, I've been away from this club a long time. It's a club I loved as a boy. It's a club I grew up loving. My father loved, sat on the knee of my father. My cousin who died very young was the first person to take me there. We've all got stories. This is my club as much as anybody's. And yeah, if I made a mess, then of course it's well after time that I should apologize. I suffered. Many will say that I deserve to suffer, but hey, nobody was getting my shares.
Okay, well, I think that's a good point to move on to the football. So Sunset on Hibs, the plot to destroy Hibernian. It's the book, and is it launched already, David? Is it available?
I think it's out at the beginning of next month.
There you go. Now you're more than welcome to hang around and listen to the next bit, David, or if you wanted to drop off. We're going to talk about the game yesterday, Hibs exit in the.
I'll listen for a while, and I may drop up at some time. But thank you very much for having me on. And as I say to all you guys out there, it's great to be talking about Hibs again after so many years.
Thank you. Okay, right. So, Carl and John, Rangers yesterday, 2-0 defeat. John, what were your thoughts on the game?
I thought that it was an uncharacteristically cagey display by the two sides, given the stage of the competition it was at, given the two teams that were taking part. And I think we were basically undone by two lapses in concentration, 2 bits of good finishing, clinical finishing for Rangers.
Yep. Colin, what about you?
I was disappointing, but it was. I think the Boyle goal getting chopped off probably changes the game, doesn't it? Because if that had stood, I think it would have been a bit more like a sort of last season performance. But a lot of the anger and frustration, I suppose, is that we just sat off. They're perceived to be there for the take in. They've not won many games this season. They've drawn a lot, but we didn't go for them. Even at 2-0 down, that second goal just before half time, that almost killed the game, right? But how often have we said 2-0? If we'd got a goal to go 2-1, their fans would have got edgy. They would have been on their back. It would have all came back. And we didn't go. We didn't even the second half. It didn't look like we. I can't even think of a chance. But chances were in the first half. Second half we didn't create none. We weren't on them. It was second half was really disappointing. First half I thought was quite even, which is a bit mental because it was 2-0 at half time, but it felt even. So yeah, it was a bit disappointing.
How much do you think their goals come in either side of our goal being chopped off? I think Boyle's had another chance. It's going over the bar. There's been the header as well. It was almost like we'd had a little bit of momentum. We were starting to create chances, and then we had the sucker punch at the other end. Had that chance ourselves, sucker punch up the other end.
Yeah, it just gave them a lift, didn't it? That's. I think goals change games. I mean, that's the cliche, isn't it? And we've always had the goal disallowed when. I mean, we'll come on to that as well. Talk about that decision. But it's ironic because it's gone from a moment that should have given us a huge lift, going 1-0 up, and probably ends up giving Rangers a lift because they get a reprieve and then they score not long after it. It's 2 goals before half time. The second half, Rangers were in cruise control. They didn't have to do anything. They just had to stop us from getting back into the game, and they kind of did it comfortably. I was so disappointed. I think we knew what we needed to do to go in to that game, which was to get in their faces and make it difficult, be aggressive, press them, upset the crowd, all this kind of thing. We just didn't.
Which apparently, when that goal went in, that everybody thought was a goal, that they were revolting even more so than normal. But they weren't very happy when that goal went in, and that was what we needed. We needed them on their back, even though there was only 30,000 of them there rather than the normal 45, 50. But we didn't put that pressure on them. I'm not sure why. Although it was how we played games last season.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of gave the other team all the possession and says we'll just pick you off, with a Boyle. So it was almost like we'll try and do what we've done last year. Whereas actually, I don't know if that was the right approach yesterday because they were fair enough. They brought their best player back, but they were there to be attacked.
Mm-hmm. John, what do you think of the lineup? We obviously made a change. Salinger came in, Hanley came in, Mulligan shifted over to the right wing back, Chaiwa came in.
I was disappointed it wasn't 3-4-3 after I'd suggested it for the preview show on the Friday. I wasn't disappointed with seeing Hanley playing because obviously he's the 63 cap Scotland Hall of Famer. But I quite like balance on either side of the pitch. So you've got, I think we had, was it Abita over on the left-hand side?
Mm-hmm.
And Hanley's just not the balance for that. Hanley's, I kind of think of him as being the sort of the guy in the middle of defence, and he's playing on the right-hand side. He's not going to bomb forward, for example, like Abita would to support the attack, or like O'Hara might, or how Lewis Miller might have done previously. But I can understand the rationale for putting him in there to have a bit of experience if you consider that Rangers were going to have more of the ball. So I didn't have a massive concern about the lineup going into it. Just that imbalance that I wouldn't have selected personally, but that's why you've got David Gray in charge, guys with coaching badges, with experience who've played the game.
Colin, what about you? What do you think of the changes?
I was fine with them. I think we suspected the keeper would come in just because it was the cup game, and obviously there's calls for him to get in the team anyway. But they played the previous cup game. Other than that, I thought the team was pretty similar to what we were discussing on the preview show.
Mm-hmm.
I think we thought Hanley might come in, and I was thinking Milligan would move out there because everybody's been saying the right hand side's our problem. So they changed it. They changed the whole right hand side to Milligan and Hanley from O'Hara and Cadden. And I don't think we were that bad doing the right hand side yesterday. I don't think Milligan had a great game though, and I can see why folk are shouting for him to go back into midfield. But I don't think we looked weak down there. It didn't look like we were losing loads of, they were getting loads of crosses in for that side of the park or anything. So I did feel like it tightened up.
How do you feel about some of the noise about like chopping, changing players? So using Mulligan as an example, like playing at right wing back, there's a difference in opinion between supporters. Like some think that he should play in the middle, some think he should play right wing back. How much uncertainty and unsettlement do you think that causes for supporters when it does seems like none of us can agree on who should play where?
For players?
For fans?
For fans, I think, yeah.
I don't know. I a lot of fans, like I try and just keep I just want the best team out there, right? Which sounds mad, but I'm reading the message boards and that, and I'm thinking, folk want their favourite player playing rather than it being the best team. So it's like if we've got midfielders that we feel are better than Mulligan, but Mulligan's still a better player than Cadden, for example, at the right, I'm happy to play him over there. Whatever's best for the team, rather than it being, well, I want to see my favourite player in the favourite position I see him playing, because that's what it reads as when you're reading the messages. And the same goes. I've seen folk criticise the goalie. The goalie never done anything wrong yesterday, but it's almost like they're going, but I want the other goalie playing next week. You're like, well, you might do that, but that's not a reason to say that goalie wasn't good yesterday, because he never made any mistakes. He made one save, and his distribution was good to bring back one of the old what's it? What do you call it? Tropes.
Yeah.
I was really disappointed with the midfield though, so I can totally see why folk would say get Mulligan into midfield, because that midfield was passive yesterday. McGrath, Chaiwa, and Levitt. I thought Levitt was the best of the three, and I know I'm going against the grain there because I've seen it on the message boards and on the Patreon chat and all that. But when Levitt came off, I thought that's just a pre-planned sub, because the other two aren't even as good as him today. Yeah. But I think they've got that. I'm sorry, John. Chaiwa, Mulligan, McGrath. They came in. They played one or two good games at the start, and they've got that much credit in the bank for the 2 games that folk can't see past it now to go, they're not playing that well.
Yeah. I was just going to say, like, I agree with you about Levitt. He seemed to be the one that was contributing offensively, and it was the other two, I think, that lost their markers for the 2 goals.
It's totally all ran off them.
Right, we've got loads of talking points to get through. So before I go into them, I'm going to just ask you both about the goal that get disallowed, and then we'll go to the talking points that get sent in. John, handball was given. It looked like on first viewing that it was a perfectly good goal. There's one angle behind the goals that looks like it's come off Boyle's arm. Didn't seem to be too many complaints from Boyle. Gray afterwards said it's the right decision. Do we just have to suck that one up?
It's a strange one, because, and it's something I've argued for before, like if the ball touches your hand in the box, then it just should be an immediate penalty. However, I think the nature of the way that the ball is connected with his hand as he's running through, he's not moved it into his path. However, I can also see the other point of view that it has bounced fortuitously into his path to allow him to run on and get the finish on it. It's a good finish, but it probably is the right decision to disallow the goal. Although I was going to ask you, because you seem to be the VAR expert amongst the three of us, well, probably you and Colin.
It's not VAR thing. It's the rule. It's not. It's just the rule. It's not. It was VAR that overturned it, obviously, but it's the referee.
I was going to ask about the factual overturn because it's not something that I think we've had the opportunity to discuss too often.
Yeah, no, but you didn't see it very often. That's the thing. It's because it's only things like offside and that you would really get a factual overturn.
Did it hit his hand or did it no?
It's annoying because mind it used to be that ball played him. Mind that's what you would shout. Ball played the man. You know that, right? But that's not a thing. If you score a goal for it, it's apparently. Well, not apparently. It's not been a thing for a few seasons, has it? Because he got an advantage from it. But it's fucking frustrating because it just basically skiffed off his hand on the way through. And if his hand wasn't there, it would have hit his hip, and it would have probably went the same way. You know what I mean? But it hit his hand, and it's shite because my brother-in-law he messaged me saying he was saying is that getting chopped off because obviously they're getting the VR check when you're at the ground. They don't tell you because it might be a riot and all that. And I'm going, nah, he's in half because I just assumed it would be an offside. It would be Boyle running through in goals. And I was like, nah, he's in his half. No, it's handball they're checking. I was like, fuck, handball. And it was only when eventually, because I've even seen the clip on Premier today that they put out. There's about, I don't know, 6, 7 angles, and it's only that very last one that you go, oh fuck it, they hit his hand, because the other ones you can't tell.
So what you're saying, they were going looking for it to try to find it in every single angle possible.
Aye.
Well, that's what the cameras are for, eh?
Right, just conscious of time, so I'm going to pick up a few talking points. Off YouTube, me says 1 win in 8 games and conceding goals at the worst time. It's seriously unacceptable. Been shocking all season except Europe away, dropping points where we shouldn't. This conceding goals just before half time, John, it happened again. It's a bit of a habit now. What does Gray do to fix that?
It's a really good question. I can't even remember the justification I gave it last week. I think it was something to do with I was more concerned about losing goals towards the 90th minute rather than the 45th. I think the opening goal yesterday, it was Chaiwa just switches off, just loses his runner, and the boy gets a good header in. Is it? I don't know. Does he just reinforce the need for concentration for every second of the game?
You know, it's funny because we spoke about it last year and kind of made a joke at it but it was because we were making silly mistakes. Now it's losing goals before half time, and it's like, I mean, they said, how do you coach concentration? But then we seem to manage it. So I don't know. Maybe get them in their beds earlier at night or something. I don't know, or do concentration tests in the dressing. I don't know. 'Cause there's something that they're doing between 43 and 45 minutes that you go. Yeah, I joked about it the other day, didn't I? Saying it's like the tea's too nice. Was that in the previous show? I can't remember.
That was it. Yeah.
Cup of tea, can't wait to get in there. It's cold, and it's getting colder, eh? The nights are fair trotting in. But
I'm doing Sudoku and word games in my downtime.
It's just, it is. I seen it. Somebody listed at them how many goals we've lost just before half time this season. It's like the majority of games.
You need Craig Sampson just shouting for the touchline, telling there's 20 minutes left. 20 minutes to go, that's still half time, and
it's
then
still 0-0 and that stuff.
Point to the forehead. Ronnie said, thought we were the better side in the first half, thought Bowie should have been taken off instead of Boyle. Sandy said, seems to happen, form dipping after Europe with most teams. It's like heady heights, then back to eating porridge. I think it's a hangover effect. Jack Flash, how come
continental breakfast versus porridge?
Versus porridge, yeah. Jack Flash asks, how come they can't pick up Raskin at the corners? Sandy complaining about the service that Bowie was getting. Bowie was poor yesterday. David McNiven on Twitter said, sat in too deep, too long. Should have pressed a nervous, under pressure Rangers team like we did against better opposition in Midtjylland and Legia away in Europe. Marking a corner to allow the smallest player in the park to score with a header simply isn't good enough too. John, what do you think went wrong with the intensity race? Was it a tactical ploy? Or was it the deliberate tactics from Gray, or did the players just bottle it?
I don't think they bottled it. I think Colin mentioned something earlier about getting the crowd on their back, and I think the crowd were already on their back because of the the protests outside the ground with the balls getting chucked on the pitch or that sort of thing. But we just never seemed to. I think Colin was right that if we'd got that goal, then it would have ramped up the pressure another notch. The shouts about Martin, Nigel Corner, Brussels, Martin, all that sort of stuff would have gone on. I don't know, like when we've been talking about like split tens and how we're trying to play, like, are we trying to play a different type of football? But yesterday we reverted to something, but we don't have the personnel to play it.
How do you mean?
So last season, Colin mentioned it before, that how we tended to play last season was kind of soak up a bit of pressure, hit on the break.
Mm-hmm.
And this season we've adapted. We made a slight tweak. We talked about it in a couple of the recent episodes where it's, I think, one player is dropping deeper. Colin, correct me if I'm wrong.
So it was a 3-4-1-2 and it's now 3-4-2-1. But I couldn't tell what we were doing last night.
And I don't know, like, so there's been some new personnel that have been brought in. So Jamie McGrath being one of them. There's been a suggestion previously that he starts well at all his previous clubs and then starts to tail off. Is he a player that we tried to fit into a system yesterday that we'd adapted from the one that we tried to get him into in the first place? Is that something that made us look even more disjointed or maybe slightly not clicking as much as we weren't clicking already, if that makes sense?
I think it's a case that we missed chance. Like, every kind of had that sort of, Colin, you talked about tropes earlier on, but that the Chantis-shaped hole. Chantis did a power of work in the midfield last season. Very mobile, very physical, but he was also a player that made things happen. Like, he was keen to get on the ball, drive forward, go deep to protect the defence. I don't think we've got a midfielder like that at the moment, and I think that was a big part of our success last season. Are we missing that sort of midfielder? And is that why, kind of almost no matter what Gray's trying beyond the two in midfield, it's not going to work because that two isn't effective?
Maybe a bit. I think Chaiwa looks like he could be that player based on what we've seen in his first couple of games, but I just think he's struggling to replicate that, or he's not played enough games yet either. He's not settled. He's only played 4 games or something for us.
He's used to the continental breakfast. He's experiencing the porridge. You never looked at. I think he struggled in his second game against St Mirren, and he struggled yesterday. So it could be that he needs to adapt. It could be that we're in that, similar to what we were saying about Mulligan earlier, that we can't find the right player for that Triantis-shaped hole.
You maybe just need a run of games as well. Like and the team needs a run of games where it's a bit settled with one system and that kind of thing.
It hasn't been great. Like it's not been great, but I mean, like I see the stats have been turned round into the 1 win in 8. Whereas I actually looked it up earlier, and it's 4 domestic defeats in 10 months as well. 3 to Rangers and Celtic, 1 to Aberdeen. So it depends how you want to spin your stats, I guess, as well.
It's first domestic defeat of the season, and we're into September. John Mitchell said, conceding far too many goals. What a chance to have a right go at them. Pish. Jack C99 said, honestly, would say yesterday we saw our worst performance of the season, and I don't think David Gray knows his strongest starting 11. That needs change quickly. I need to go back to our 3-5-2 formation, as that got us our 17 unbeaten last season. Our midfield and defence were very poor. Scott Miller said, tactics, sitting back against a team who's nervous, their fans are ready to explode, and we incredibly let them just have the ball and gain confidence. For all the plaudits, this team needs to start winning games of football. Albert Ali said, ball needs dropped, too many chances missed. Mulligan at right back was exposed too many times, and the substitutions are too predictable now. Go with 2 up top, Bowie and Cleege. Colin, you're a bit of bee in your bonnet about the substitutions as well, because it's you sort of referenced it earlier on, but it's like pre-planned subs rather than adapting to the game.
Not even yesterday though. Like you look up now, you're going, that's 55 minutes. This is subs warming up. Then they get shouted, and then Levitt gets subbed every week. It doesn't matter what's happening. It seems it's like you just know Levitt's coming off in between 60 and 65 minutes. Because I couldn't believe it yesterday when, like, I didn't think Levitt was that good either, right? I thought the midfield was struggling completely. But for him to be the first of the 3 off, I was like, he's like the least of the problems here. Like the other 2 have just let runners go and aren't getting on the ball, and they're not putting tackles in. Nobody put a tackle in. Like Mulligan, Chaiwa, there was guys just running past them and walking round them yesterday. And you're like, they're the guys you want with the bite that are going to put somebody up in the air, or get a bit of life about it. I was really disappointed with that yesterday, because I think last season that was a bit of a, none of midfielders, but Iredale and Rocky and that, they were putting one in on somebody and leaving a bit on. We never had any of that sort of devilment.
You're right. Andy Grierson said Nicky Cadden is a man down. Wand or no wand, I'd keep Salinger handling the team for a run now. Big players, Chaiwa, Bowie, McGrath and Mulligan not at the races. Neil Waters said Mulligan is not the answer, right wing back, far too easy to play through, not brave enough and no drive to attack a poor team and made them look good. Ali said we're Hibs playing, still waiting for them to turn up. Jack said more goals in the last 5 minutes of the half. It's becoming a real issue. Does it speak to a lack of concentration or metal on the side? No real standouts on our side. Ultimately, a very mediocre team performance. John, we spoke about that a couple of times this season about the number of games where we've had where we don't have one or two players who are like a
standout,
a 13 or a 14 out of 15. They're just like sort of were 7s and 8s. And it was another game like that yesterday. We didn't really have anybody getting top marks or close to top marks in the game. What'd you put that down to?
Don't know. Porridge. I really don't know. Like, football is a funny thing. Like, I think where we were 2 seasons ago and the challenges that we had compared to last season, albeit we had that difficult start, like, we really turned things around. And you would like to think that you have that sort of solid foundation that you go and build on and improve upon. And like, we seem to have like we talked about it, there's a much more settled squad. I think we were relatively happy with the activity that we had in the transfer window. And yet with the best laid plans, it hasn't quite kicked on yet. But one of the things I was going to mention there was about Nicky Cadden. I think he struggled since he had his hamstring injury. However, there was one glimmer of hope yet that we might get last season's Nicky Cadden back with that cross that he swung in for Boyle, because I think that's one thing that's been missing from his game that we've seen since he came back into the team this season, was his crossing ability. But there was that one yesterday that's given me a bit of room for optimism.
It was a hit off Boyle's shoulder, that one.
What a cross that was.
He's got to get that on target, eh?
But I thought was it off his shoulder?
Yeah.
Oh, dear me, I need to get my eyes checked then. I was sure it was a misplaced header because he wasn't far away. Maybe if he had got his head in it would have gone in the back of the net.
Absolutely. I think that's it. The shoulder, you never know. I mean, Stephen Fletcher scored one of his hearts off his shoulder, but you just get lucky or no, and that wasn't it just kind of went the way he was pointing, whereas the head you can direct it a bit more, I suppose. But
I think that Fletcher goal went to come from Alan O'Brien's one and only assist. Aye. Thank you, if I remember right. Is there a danger, right? So the reaction in the game yesterday, understandably, folk are annoyed. Like I was annoyed. I always get like I can't sleep at night when we've had like either a really good game or a really bad game, because I want to see what everybody's saying about it. So I'll be on Hibsnet and the Bounce and Twitter, like just I process it loads. And last night was one of those ones that I totally understand folk are annoyed. It's not been a great start to the season for all. We're talking about how the stats can be spun either way. We didn't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? And it's the first domestic defeat. But should we be concerned? Like, what's the trajectory for the club, for the team at the moment, Colin? Are we showing signs of progress, looking like we're going to get it right, or are we right to be concerned?
I think there's definitely a bit of concern, but I think it's more around tinkering with a tried and tested formula for last season, trying to evolve it, and it's no quite clicking yet, which is then leading to these questions or points that some of the guys have made about not knowing his best 11, because he has chopped and changed it a lot, but then it's almost like the problems of having a bigger squad or a better quality squad, because whoever gets picked, there's always somebody going, I'd rather he was playing. Aye. Like, back to my point about that's my favourite player though. It's like if he picks Mulligan in midfield and no Chaiwa, the way guys, a goalie scored over in Warsaw. You know what I mean? It's like there's always somebody going to be missing out, and I think like we need to kind of try and get behind it rather than moaning about it all the time. Like, folk are moaning about Gray saying, Rangers are a bad team. Like, they're not. They've got to finish second in the league. They'll still finish second in the league. And I kind of said it on the preview show. It's like, our expectations have went up here that we're going to go to Ibrox and just comfortably win and put them out and then march on to the semi-final. That's what I said on Friday. But Gray's getting criticised for saying that after the game. I said it before the game. And it's like the stuff that needs fixed, and he needs to get his best team with his best subs if they're going to be pre-planned and all that. But like, I don't think we're that bad.
See, just on the expectation levels, Colin, like, what do you think? Like last year, we had a really bad start to the season, and I think it's broadly accepted that the catalyst, or one of the catalysts for the change, was that late equaliser against Aberdeen. But I never got the sense at all during that long unbeaten run that anyone was ever thinking, we're going to win this game, we're going to win this game. It was almost like just kind of like flying below the radar almost. How do we get back to that with what's arguably a better quality of squad?
I don't know, because if we've got 3 tough games coming up, right? Falkirk, hard place to go. Is it away to Celtic? I think it is.
Celtic, away to Hearts,
and then it's away to Hearts. So, like, if we lose the 3, there's already folk sniping right around. The Grey doesn't know what he's doing and all that. If we lose the 3, that's got to give him loads of ammo, and that'll build. And we've seen it before. We've seen it before internally. Like, as a fan base, that's what we do. So I think Tuesday's really big. Like, we joke, John, don't we, about the must-win games and all that. But for Grey, it almost is, because there's folk waiting.
Can you hear the knives sharpening in the background?
There is a bit of that, though. Like that, the sense of that, definitely.
Reading the message board earlier on, like there's a fucking 400 odd post thread on them. Like, we've lost one domestic game this season.
We've got Falkirk conscious time, right? So we're going to wrap up, but we've got Falkirk on Tuesday night. Colin, you mentioned they're a tough place to go. John, how important is it we get back, back on the saddle, get a win under our belts, and if we do, are we right back on track again? Because we're third in the league. We've got this game in hand. If we win it, we're right back in the mix again. Is it just as simple as win a game and everything feels all right again?
Aye. So, like, it might be that I wouldn't say like the catalyst similar to the Aberdeen game, because that requires us to be 3-2 down with seconds remaining. But I think what is probably more important than a victory on Tuesday is that you see something probably more recognisable and more, like, I'm reluctant to say back to basics, but seeing more deep and early crosses for Nicky Cadden, more of Jack Iredale, Rocky Bashiri laying into someone and getting the fans and the team aligned again, because that feels a wee bit disjointed at the moment. I could quite, how to phrase this, I could overlook not getting 3 points if we saw more of that, because that would lay the marker for the following week and everything that follows that. So it's like a small sacrifice for a longer term game.
Okay. Right, we will wrap up there. We've got, for subscribers, we'll be back with extra time tomorrow. What we'll do, we've got tons of talking points on YouTube and loads for Twitter to cover the Rangers game. So we'll dive into that a bit more when we do extra time tomorrow. If you don't already subscribe, you can do that directly on YouTube, or you can go to our Patreon and do that. If you are on our Patreon, you'll also have had the first edition of our newsletter stroke fanzine called The Banger. That came out on Friday. We'll have another one out on Friday coming. Some fan writing from across the support and some great stuff in there. So if you're interested in contributing, you can drop us a wee note at longbangers@gmail.com and we'll include your work. In the meantime, thanks very much for tuning in, David. Thank you very much for your time. John, Colin, thanks as always, and we will see you all next time.